press Shift D, press X, and duplicate it right here. Hey everyone, may the 4th be with you. So finally this year I'm able to create a Star Wars themed tutorial on a Star Wars day, and I really hope you will enjoy this one. And if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the fastest and most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through local illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environments. We even have a little bit of sculpting there, hard surface modeling. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's jump right into the Blender file, and first of all, let's just delete the cube and the light. So drag a selection, press X and choose delete. And now we'll press Shift A, go mesh and create a plane down here. Now tap into the edit mode. Let's press S and then 4 to scale it 4 times and confirm. This is to give us sense of the scale for the scene. And now select these 2 vertices on the side by holding Shift and press E, then Z. And let's enter 8 and let's confirm by pressing enter. And now we'll create a simple low poly TIE Fighter here in the middle. So let's tab out, and before we do, let's just go edit preferences and we'll activate some of the add-ons. So let's go add-ons and now search for the extra objects add-on. So let's type in extra and just locate add mesh extra objects, check the box, and then search for loop tools. And again, just check the box here. You can click here, save the preferences. If you want, just close this. And now let's press Shift A and you will see all of these options right here. So let's select round cube here. And here in the round cube settings, let's switch the preset to quad sphere. And let's reduce the divisions to 4. And now we can press G then Z and move this up right about here. And now we tap into the edit mode. Let's look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad. Switch to face select right here, or press 3 on a keyboard and select these front faces right there. Right click and we'll use the loop tools add-on now and just choose circle, and that will basically make this circular, and press X and delete faces. Now press 2 for edge select or click here. Alt click this loop and press F to fill, and we can press E to extrude this a little bit. Now press I to inset like this, and then E again to extrude towards the back. Now let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now we can tab out, let's press Shift A and we'll add mesh and circle. Now let's modify the vertices to 8. Let's tap into the edit mode and we can press R, then X and 90 to rotate 90 degrees, and let's confirm. And let's look from the front and we can make this smaller until we don't see any of the edges like this, and press F to fill and I to inset like this. And then additionally we can press G then Y and move it towards the front. So that will help us to create that iconic glass shield. Now we can tab out and let's press Shift D to duplicate this, right click to release it in place, and now tab into the edit mode, and with the middle selected and the edge select mode active, let's hold Alt, Control and Shift and select these edges all around. And now we're going to bevel this, so press Ctrl B and create the bevel like that, and we can increase number of cuts to 2 using mouse wheel and create a frame like this. Now let's switch for face select by pressing 3 or click here. Now let's look from the front. We are just going to select one of these faces, hold Shift and select all the others that we're gonna delete, including the middle one. Press X and delete faces. And now we can press A to select all, E then Y to extrude on Y axis and just extrude it out so it almost touches the side there. Now let's tab out and let's select the main sphere. Tap into the edit mode and we are going to select these 4 faces on the side. Right click and again use loop tools to make a circle out of this. And now we can press E to extrude it outside. And let's press S to scale it down a little bit and press X and delete faces. Now to make things easier, let's look from the front. Let's go for vertex select, enable X-ray view and just select everything here on the left side. Press X and delete vertices, and now we are going to go to modifiers panel. Let's add modifier, generate and mirror. And now let's just enable clipping. So this way we are mirroring everything we are doing on one side, so we don't have to do everything twice. And now let's alt click here, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now we can tab out, let's disable the X-ray view and let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode and press R, then Y and 90 to rotate this 90 degrees. And we can just scale this up, something like this, and we can adjust the size later and press S, then Y, and scale it on Y-axis as well, just like that. And now press Ctrl R and create a loop cut here in the middle. If you have more of those, let's reduce them with the mouse wheel and just create one loop cut here and right click to release in place. And now select these vertices on the outside by holding Shift, press S, then Y, and just scale them inwards by pressing S and then Y, like this. And now we can press A to select all and do an inset by pressing I. And now we can press P and separate the selection. That will separate this into a new object. So we can tab out, select the frame here, tab into the edit mode and press A, E to extrude this out, like this. Now we can tab out and select the one in the middle, tab into the edit mode, press A to select all and press G, then X, and move it a little bit towards the middle here. Now tab out and again we'll duplicate this, so let's press Shift D to duplicate, right click to release in place, and now tab back in, and let's go for vertex select and enable X-ray view, and we'll select these pairs of vertices by holding Shift and press J to join them, and do that on the other side as well. Now we can press 2 for edge select, hold Alt and Shift and select these edges, and press Ctrl B to bevel. And let's reduce number of cuts to 0 using mouse wheel and create bevel, like that. Okay, now let's look from the side and we can make this larger. So we cover it up nicely on the sides there. And now press 3 for face select, select these pieces in the middle, press X and delete faces. Now we can press A and extrude using E. Again press A, G, then X to move it to the side. You can look from the top if you want to see if you're in the middle roughly. So something like this should be there. And now we can tab out and let's press Shift A and let's add a circle and let's modify the vertices to 6. Tab into the edit mode and scale it down. Let's press R, then Y and 90 to rotate 90 degrees on Y-axis. Press F to fill and E to extrude. Now let's look from the front. We can select the geometry on one side, press G, then X, and move it outside a little bit. So we get something like this. Now if you tab out and disable the X-ray view, this is what you get here. And let's create some detail right there. So tab into the edit mode, press 3 for face select, select this in the middle. And we can press S to scale it down a little bit, press I to inset and E to extrude. And now basically this will be complete, so tab out. Now let's look from the side again, drag a selection around everything here, including the inside. And let's hold Shift, select the outer frame. And let's go and add a mirror modifier here as well. And now use the eyedropper tool to pick the body. And then click this arrow here and copy to select it. That will distribute it to those other objects as well. And then we can press S to make this larger. I think this is kind of the scale I'm looking for. And additionally, I will hold Shift and select these parts in the middle. And then finally the body. So it's highlighted with yellow, press Ctrl P and parent to object. Now, if we select only this, we are able to move the whole TIE Fighter. And it's too large here. So let's press S and scale it all down. Now we'll create the background that will loop infinitely. So let's look from the camera by pressing 0 on a numpad, and we can select the camera by clicking on frame, press G, then Z and move it up. And then let's go to the output settings and modify the resolution to something like 1600 to 1200. And then we can also rotate this. So let's press N for the side panel, and in the view settings, let's enable camera to view. And now we are able to use our viewport controls to control the camera. So let's create a view like this, for example, and let's not forget to disable this. And now we can select the background plane and let's add some detail there. So let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to origin, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode and press E to extrude. And basically we are just going to create some like basic default sci-fi greeble and nothing too detailed. As you can see, the TIE Fighter itself is not so detailed. So this will be a very simple local illustration. So we don't need to worry too much about the level of detail on the environment. But if you want to really spend some time, to create all kinds of different greeble and structures and pipes and whatnot, that's totally up to you. You can do that, of course. So now let's tab out and let's switch the snapping to face project. and let's check align rotation to target. So now we are able to just press Alt D to duplicate this and hold Control to snap it on the surfaces around. So now let's press Alt D several times, and we can press S to scale it down, and then Alt D Y to move it on Y-axis, and Shift R to repeat that operation. And this way we are able to quickly, add a few more details here and there all around. Now I'll select this one, Alt D, and hold Control to snap it right here, press S to scale it down, and then Alt D and Y, and Shift R several times to repeat. Now I'll press Shift A and create mesh and circle. So we have some variation there, press G then Y to move it outside, press S to scale it down, tab into edit mode, press F to fill, E to extrude, then I to inset and E to extrude again. So we have some little detail that's not rectangular. Now I'll tab out, press Alt D, and snap it here as well and make it smaller. For example, press Alt D then Z to duplicate on Z axis as well. And now let's just finish with some of these. And if you want to add some pipe or something, it's really easy to do. Just select the original plane, tab into the edit mode, press 2 for edge select the edge, and press Shift D to duplicate, right click to release, and P, enter to separate the selection. Now if you tab out and select that new edge, you can just right click and convert to curve, and then in the curve settings geometry section you can increase the depth, and there you have some piping. And now let's reduce the resolution, press G then X to move it outside a little bit, and G then Z to move it up, and then we can press Alt D and Z to duplicate on Z axis as well. And let's move some of these all around as well. But all in all, I think this will be enough. So to make things super easy, first let's select the pipes here, right click and convert to mesh, and then we'll select everything, and here as well by holding Shift, hold Shift, select the original plane, and just press Ctrl J, and that will join everything into the geometry, so it's only one object, so we don't need to deal with these as separate objects, which is a little bit destructive. But then again, you can always go inside and separate these pieces from the geometry if you want, using P and separate. So no reason to not do this and join everything into one single object. Now in the object mode, let's go to modifiers and let's add array modifier. And let's modify the relative offset to 0 on X and -1 on Y. This way we will be able to move this and create an illusion of the TIE Fighter flying forward, but we'll be moving only the background. But to be able to do this at speed, we'll need quite a long part. So let's enter something like 16. And now let's add new modifier, and let's add another array modifier. And again, we'll go 0 on the X-axis and 1 on the Y-axis. So we have something in the back as well. And then let's do one more. And let's go 0 here and -1 here. So this extends to the other side as well. Now let's expand the timeline a little bit, and I want to do like 120 frames of animation. So on the frame 1, let's go to the item menu here, and with the background selected, let's insert the Y location keyframe. So right click and insert single keyframe, and let's move to 121. And here, as you remember, we have 8 meters of one square, and we multiplied that by 16 with the array modifier. So let's go 8 by 16, and let's right click and insert single keyframe. So this way we are moving this. But now if you go to the camera view and play back the animation, you can see it accelerates in the beginning, which is not what we want. So let's press Ctrl Tab here in the graph editor so you can see the curve. You can hold Ctrl and use middle mouse button to zoom in on the curve. And now we want this flat, so this doesn't accelerate or decelerate. So let's just select everything, press T and choose linear. Now this will be a linear movement. But since we extended this too far with the second array modifier, we can afford to go even faster. And I think it will be great to have a little bit more of that speed. So I think the double of the current speed will be enough. So not 128, let's try 256. Right click and replace single keyframe. And now this is much more like it. We have some speed. If you're worried about the repetition on the background, don't worry, we'll use the motion blur and this really won't matter too much. So we can now select the camera, press G and Z twice to move in and out a little bit. And here, if you want to extend the background, you can just tab into the edit mode. Let's go to frame 1. And you can select this edge on the side, press G then X, and just extend like this, so it covers the area. Now we can tab out. And now to finish with the animation, let's give the TIE Fighter some movement as well. So select the body. Let's go to frame 1 and right click on the Z location and insert single keyframe. And now we'll need X location and Y rotation. So right click, insert single keyframe. But before we actually create a rotation keyframe, let's rotate, because the animation should loop and we should begin in the middle of the movement. So press R, then Y, and rotate this a little bit like this. And right click and insert single keyframe. And now let's expand this on the side here. And for the Z location, we'll just use some noise modifiers. So let's go to the modifiers here. If you don't see this panel, you can press N. And let's just add noise modifier, modify the scale to something like 20. Let's play it back and you can see this is now hovering up and down. And we can use like 0.5 or something. This should be enough. And now you can see this doesn't loop properly. There's a little bit of a jump here in the beginning. So we'll need to kind of iron this out, and let's hold Control and middle mouse button to kind of zoom in on our curve. And you can see that's because the value in the beginning isn't the same as the value in the front, but we can easily do that by restricting the frame range from 1 to 120, but then use this blend in and blend out for 20 frames. And now you will see it will kind of smooth out towards the initial value. And additionally, we can play with the offset, so we can really find nice animation curve like this. And now if you play it back, there shouldn't be any jump when the animation goes over the 120 frames. So that's for the Z location. Now for the X location, we'll do that manually. So let's just go to frame, let's say frame 40. And press G then X and move it to the side here like this. And we can right click and insert single keyframe. And we don't see any values here because we're too zoomed out on the different axes. So we can use Control and middle mouse button and up and down movement to zoom in and left and right to zoom on the horizontal axis. And now you can see we have this movement right here. And we can do the similar thing and go to the other side. So let's just select this keyframe right here, press Shift D and go to the other side to frame 90 like this. And then let's select this one, press Shift D and press X and move it right here to the frame 121 because we want one frame extra for the looping. And now this will do some movement from side to side, but as you can see, it accelerates in the beginning and decelerates. So this wouldn't work too well with the looping. So we can select these handles and move them so we begin in the middle of the movement in this linear motion. And we can do the same thing right here and try to kind of match this angle right there. And now if you play it back, you can see you just go to the other side and it nicely goes from side to side. And now if you want to limit the range of the movement, you can just select all, press S, then Y, and just scale it on Y-axis to make this movement not so pronounced. Now one more thing I want to do is to introduce some rotation when the ship moves from side to side. So let's just locate the places where the ship should rotate. And on the frame 1, we already have the first keyframe. So let's move along, and the TIE Fighter shouldn't rotate here. It should start rotate only about here. So around frame 35 or frame 30, let's right click and insert the same single keyframe. And then the rotation happens, let's say around 20 or 30 frames. Let's try 20 and let's press R then Y and rotate to the other side. Right click and insert single keyframe. Then we move to the other side and again somewhere here before we actually hit the side movement. So around frame 80 it should start its rotation. So right click, insert single keyframe, and around 100 will rotate to the other side. But this should be the same one as the one in the beginning. So let's hold Control and middle mouse button. Let's zoom in a little bit and we can just duplicate this one. So press Shift D, press X and duplicate it right here. So we should have something like this here. Now let's see how this works. And we can make it a little bit more smooth. So first of all, let's go to the output settings and modify the frame rate to something like 30. And now if we play it back, we have more smooth movement at 30 FPS. And now we can make this animation more smooth by basically making these rotations a little bit longer. And then if you want to add a little bit of a jiggle there, you can add modifier on the existing animation as well. But increase the scale to 20 and reduce the strength to something like 0.1. And the scale might be something like 10 or 15. So you can see there will be a little bit of the bumpiness in the movement. Okay, so that's it basically for the animation. Now let's set up some materials and render settings. So first of all, let's go to the render settings and I will switch to cycles, enable GPU and denoising. And now I will use something like 128 frames here. Same for the viewport, and then press Ctrl B to limit the render preview only for the camera bounce, and we can collapse this a little bit. And press Ctrl Tab to go back into timeline so it's not so noisy in the viewport here. And now let's press Shift A and let's add light and sunlight. And we can press Z and choose the render preview. And now this is something we get here. So we can press R to rotate this a little bit. And then R, then Z to rotate Z axis as well, to find some nice light angle. And we can complement this with some area light. So let's press Shift A, let's add area light, press G, then Z and move it up. Let's make it a little bit larger. And let's do something like 500 here. And then press G, then Shift Z to move it forward and back a little bit. And we can press R twice to rotate, to create a little bit of backlight like this. And now let's play with the material. So select the background here, create a new material, and let's go like darker gray with full roughness here. And for the TIE Fighter, let's create even darker shade of gray with the full roughness. And we can select this one here and make it completely black. And this frame in the middle might be the same light gray material. Same for these. And everything else here could be the dark gray material. And I think this will be quite enough. And to make the scene a little bit more interesting, we can introduce some colored lights as well. So first of all, let's make this one a little bit warmer. Okay. And then press Shift D and then Y to move the duplicate to the other side, and press Alt R to reset the rotation. And we can press G and move it away a little bit or higher. This won't be so strong. And let's change this to something blue like this, and then Shift D, Y and move one in the back here. And let's change this to reddish tone like this, so we get some variation there with the colors. And finally, in the world settings, we can introduce some color to the world as well and increase the lightness. And now we'll get some nice blending here. Finally, we can make this gray a little bit darker. And make this light here a little bit stronger, something like 1500. And let's move it closer like this. And finally, let's make some adjustments here. And finally, don't forget to go to render settings and enable motion blur. And let's select the camera, and in the camera settings, enable depth of field. Let's use the eyedropper tool to pick the TIE Fighter as the object, and let's go something really small like 0.5 or even 0.2 here. So we get this nice blur in the background. And now in the output settings, let's go and switch PNG to FFmpeg, and in the encoding I will go for MP4. And now just pick your folder right here and go render animation, and you will get your animation rendered hopefully in no time. So that's it for today's May the 4th animation with the little TIE Fighter doing a trench run. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.
Back.